hobbies more popular amongst teenage guys or teenage girls? And do teens who participate in hobbies spend less time hanging out with their friends? We'll answer those questions in today's video. And welcome back to Teaching Statistical Thinking. I'm Jeffrey. In today's video, we'll be using JUMP to help analyze the bivariate association between two categorical variables. But before we jump in, let's talk about hobbies. In Ad Health, each teen was asked the question, quote, "During the past week, how many times did you do hobbies, such as collecting baseball cards, playing a musical instrument, reading, or doing arts and crafts?" The answers ranged anywhere from not at all to 5 or more times a week. We have this data in our JUMP data set. However, we're less interested in how often a teen participated in a hobby and more interested in whether or not they actually did. So, we're going to make a new variable. Let me show you how that's done. When creating a new variable, we first add a new column. Let's title it Hobbies, ? Next, we'll right-click on the column, go down to Formula. While holding down the Shift key, we'll click Hobbies per week, conditional, match. Now we have a list of all the values under Hobbies per week. Next to none, we'll code no in quotes, because that indicates that a teen did not participate in a hobby. Next to the other 3 variables, we'll quote yes. When we're done, we press OK, and now we have a new variable indicating whether or not a teen participated in a hobby. Now we're ready to answer our first question. Are hobbies more popular amongst guys or girls? Since we're looking at the bivariate association between the variables of biological sex and hobbies, we'll go to Analyze, Fit Y by X. Let's put sex as the X factor and hobbies as the Y factor. Then we'll press OK. Now we have both a mosaic plot and a contingency table. We can close the tests for now. Let's take a look at the mosaic plot. First, we'll notice that the horizontal axis is divided almost perfectly in half by females and males. This tells us that in our data set, we have an approximately 50-50 split in gender. We'll notice the vertical bar on the right, which tells us that the vast majority of teens did participate in a hobby, approximately 80%. Next, when we examine the mosaic plot, we can tell that the conditional frequencies for males and females are almost equal. This tells us that the variable hobbies does not differ between males and females. In other words, for a teenager, gender had very little impact on whether he or she participated in a hobby. Now let's take a look at the contingency table. Based on the marginal frequencies, we can see that our estimates from the mosaic plot were approximately accurate. About 52% of the teens were females and 48% were males. Likewise, approximately 78% of the teens participated in a hobby and about 22% didn't. Furthermore, when we look at our conditional frequencies, we can see that they're very similar to our marginal frequencies, further suggesting that the two variables are likely independent. The contingency table is very useful for identifying conditional frequencies. For instance, if we want to know, of the males, how many participated in a hobby, we go to the row percentage of males and find that approximately 78% of males participated in a hobby. Similarly, if we want to find of the teens who didn't participate in a hobby, how many of them were female, we would go to the column percentage under no for hobbies and find that approximately 52% of teens who didn't participate in hobbies were female, consistent with the marginal frequency of females in our general population. Well, we have the answer to our first question. It appears that hobby involvement does not differ majorly based on gender. But what about our second question? Do people with hobbies spend less time with their friends? For this next variable, we'll be looking at friends per week, a categorical variable which indicates how many times a week an individual hung out with his or her friends. Once again, we'll be going to Analyze, Fit Y by X. This time, though, let's put hobbies on the x-axis and friends per week on the y-axis. Then we'll hit OK. The new mosaic plot and contingency table are certainly a lot more complicated than the last ones we looked at, so I'll give you a few seconds to look it over. Any observations? Well, based on the mosaic plot, it appears that teens with hobbies were less likely to spend time alone. However, they were also less likely to spend time with their friends 5 or more times a week. On the flip side, teens with hobbies were far more likely to spend time with their friends 3 or 4 times a week. This is further confirmed when we look at the contingency table. Based on the conditional frequencies, we can see that of the teens who had hobbies, approximately 9% of them did not hang out with friends, 23% of them hung out with their friends once or twice a week, 29% of them hung out with their friends 3 or 4 times a week, and 39% of them hung out with their friends 5 or more times a week. Compare this to teens without hobbies, which had values of 13, 23, 21, and 43% respectively. So why did we see the results that we saw? I don't know. Maybe hobbies allow teens to meet people with similar interests, but also serve as a time restraint so they can't hang out with their friends as frequently as they would like to. I don't know. That's something that probably needs more analysis than we have time for today. Anyway, thanks for watching. In our next video, we'll be discussing the bivariate association between one categorical variable and one numeric variable. See you next time.